Occitania, also sometimes Le Pays d'Oc, the OC country, is the historical region in southern Europe where Occitan was historically the main language spoken, and where it is sometimes still used, for the most part as a second language. This cultural area roughly encompasses the southern half of France, as well as Monaco and smaller parts of Italy and Spain. Occitania has been recognized as a linguistic and cultural concept since the Middle Ages, but has never been a legal nor a political entity under this name, although the territory was united in Roman times as the 7 provinces and in the early Middle Ages before the French conquest started in the early 13th century. Currently about 500,000 people out of 16 million in the area have a proficient knowledge of Occitan, although the language is more usually spoken in the area of French, Italian, Catalan and Spanish. Since 2006, the Occitan language has been an official language of Catalonia, which includes the Aran Valley where Occitan gained official status in 1990. Under later Roman rule, most of Occitania was known as Aquitania, itself part of the 7 provinces within a wider Provincia Romana, while the northern provinces of what is now France were called Gallia. Gallia Aquitania is thus also a name used since medieval times for Occitania, including Provence as well in the early 6th century. Thus the historic Duchy of Aquitaine must not be confused with the modern French region called Aquitaine. This is the main reason why the term Occitania was revived in the mid-19th century. The names Occitania and Occitan language appeared in Latin texts from as early as 1242 to 1254 to 1290, and during the following years of the early 14th century, texts exist in which the area is referred to indirectly as the country of the Occitan language. This derives from the name Lingua d'Oc that was used in Italian by Dante in the late 13th century. The somewhat uncommon ending of the term Occitania is most probably a portmanteau French clerks coined from OC, K, and Aquitania, Quitange, thus blending the language and the land in just one concept. Occitan and Lingua d'Oc both refer to the centuries-old set of Romance dialects that use Occifer. Yes. Geography. Occitania includes the following regions: the southern half of France, Provence, Drôme, Vivarais, Auvergne, Limousin, Guyenne, Gascony, southern Dauphiné and Languedoc. French is now the dominant language in this area, where Occitan is not recognized as an official language. The Occitan valleys in the Italian Alps, where the Occitan language received legal status in 1999. These are 14 Piedmontese valleys in the provinces of Cuneo and Torino, as well as in scattered mountain communities of the Liguria region, and, unexpectedly, in one community in the region of Calabria, the Aran Valley, in the Pyrenees, in Catalonia where Occitan has been an official language since 1990. The Principality of Monaco. Occitan or Langue d'Oc is a Latin-based Romance language in the same way as Spanish, Italian or French. There are 6 main regional varieties, with easy intercomprehension among them: Provençal, Vivre Alpens, Auvergnat, Limousin, Gascon and Languedocian. All these varieties of the Occitan language are written in valid, standard Occitan is a synthesis which respects soft regional adaptations. See also Northern Occitan and Southern Occitan. Catalan is a language very similar to Occitan, and there are quite strong historical and cultural links between Occitania and Catalonia. History. Written texts in Occitan appeared in the 10th century. It was used at once in legal then literary, scientific or religious texts. The spoken dialects of Occitan are centuries older and appeared as soon as the 8th century, at least, revealed in toponyms or in Occitanized words left in Latin manuscripts. For instance, in Thionville, 9 years before he died, Charlemagne vowed that his empire be partitioned into 3 autonomous territories according to nationalities and mother tongues. along with the Franco-German and Italian ones, was roughly what is now modern Occitania from the reunion of the broader Provence and Aquitaine. But things did not go according to plan, and at the division of the Frankish Empire, Occitania was split into different counties, duchies and kingdoms, bishops and abbots, self-governing communes of its walled cities. Since then the country was never politically united again, though Occitania was united by a common culture which used to cross easily the political, constantly moving boundaries. Occitania suffered a tangle of varying loyalties to nominal sovereigns. From the 9th to the 13th centuries, the Dukes of Aquitaine, the Counts of Foix, the Counts of Toulouse and the Counts of Barcelona rivaled in their attempts at controlling the various pays of Occitania. Occitan literature was glorious and flourishing at that time. In the 12th and 13th centuries, the troubadours invented courtly love, and the langue d'oc spread throughout all European cultivated circles. Actually, the terms langue d'oc, Occitan, and Occitania appeared at the end of the 13th century. But from the 13th to the 17th centuries, the French kings gradually conquered Occitania, sometimes by war and slaughtering the population, sometimes by annexation with subtle political intrigue. From the end of the 15th century, the nobility and bourgeoisie started learning French while the people stuck to Occitan. In 1539, Francis I issued the Ordinance of Villers-Cotterêts that imposed the use of French in administration. But despite measures such as this, a strong feeling of national identity against the French occupiers remained, and Jean Racine wrote on a trip to Eruses in 1662, "What they call France here is the land beyond the Loire, which to them is a foreign country." In 1789, the revolutionary committees tried to re-establish the autonomy of the Midi regions. They used the Occitan language, but the Jacobin power neutralized them. The 19th century witnessed a strong revival of the Occitan literature, and the writer Frédéric Mistral was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1904. But from 1881 onwards, children who spoke Occitan at school were punished in accordance with Minister Jules Ferry's recommendations. That led to a deprecation of the language known as La Vergana. The whole 14 million inhabitants of the area spoke Occitan in 1914, but French gained the upper hand during the 20th century. The situation got worse with the media excluding the use of the langue d'oc. In spite of that decline, the Occitan language is still alive and gaining fresh impetus. Outer settlements. Although not really a colony in a modern sense, there was an enclave in the county of Tripoli. Raymond Devey of Toulouse founded it in 1102 during the Crusades north of Jerusalem. Most people of this county came from Occitania and Italy, and so the Occitan language was spoken. Today, there are 14 to 16 million inhabitants in Occitania today. According to the 1999 census, there are 610,000 native speakers and another million persons with some exposure to the language. Native speakers of Occitan are to be found mostly in the older generations. The Institut d'Etudes Occitans has been modernizing the Occitan language since 1945, and the Conseil de la Langue Occitane since 1996. Nowadays Occitan is used in the most modern musical and literary styles such as rock and roll, folk rock, rap, reggae and heavy metal, detective stories or science fiction. It is represented on the Internet. Association schools teach children in Occitan. The Occitan political movement for self-government has existed since the beginning of the 20th century, and particularly since post-war years. The movement remains negligible in electoral and political terms. Nevertheless, regional elections in 2010 allowed the Parti Occitan to enter the regional councils of Aquitaine, Auvergne, Midi-Pyrénées, and Provence-Alpes Côte d'Azur. Major demonstrations in Carcassonne and Béziers and the week-long Estevada festivals in Rodez suggest that there is a revival of Occitan language and culture. However, in France, Occitan is still not recognized as an official language, as the status of French has been constitutionally protected since 1992, and Occitan activists want the French government to adopt Occitan as the second official language for 7 regions representing the south of France. Culture. Literature. Troubadourisme was the first notable element of a proper Occitan culture. Those poets from the High Middle Ages were highly appreciated for their refined lyricism and eventually gained popularity throughout Europe. Troubadourisme remained a tradition during centuries and its members were mainly from the aristocracy. William IX, Duke of Aquitaine and Bertrand de Born epitomized that movement. Occitan literature faced a rebirth during the Baroque period, mainly in Gascony through the Béarnese dialect. Indeed, Henry IV of France, whose mother tongue was Béarnese, was designed King of France. That nomination provoked a relative enthusiasm for Béarnese literature with the publication of works by Pays de Garros and Arnaud de Salette. Toulouse was also an important place for that rebirth, especially through the poems of Pere Godolin. Nonetheless, Occitan literature following the death of Henry IV had an important phase of decline, symbolized by the fact that local poets, as Clement Marot, began to write in French language. Frédéric Mistral and his Félibridge school marks the renewal of Occitan language in literature in the middle of the 19th century. Mistral won the 1904 Nobel Prize in Literature, illustrating the curiosity about the Provençal dialect, nearly considered as an exotic language, in France and in Europe. The Académie des Jocs Florals, held every year in Toulouse, is considered one of the oldest literary institutions of the Western world. Its main purpose is to encourage Occitan poetry. Music. The Romantic music composer Déodat de Séverac was born in the region, and, following his schooling in Paris, he returned to the region to compose. He sought to incorporate the music indigenous to the area in his compositions. Gastronomy. The Occitanian gastronomy or Occitan cuisine is considered as Mediterranean but has some specific features that separate it from the Catalan cuisine, or Italian cuisine. Indeed, because of the size of Occitania and the great diversity of landscapes from the mountaineering of the Pyrenees and the Alps, rivers and lakes, and finally the Mediterranean and Atlantic coast, it can be considered as a highly varied cuisine. Compared to other Mediterranean cuisines, we could note the using of basic elements and flavors, among them meat, fish and vegetables. Moreover, the frequent using of the olive oil, although also compound of elements from the Atlantic coast cuisine, with cheeses, pastes, creams, butters and more calorically food. Among well-renowned meals common on the Mediterranean coast includes ratatouille, alholi, bolherbessa, pangolkat, likewise salads with mainly olives, rice, corn and wine. Another significant aspect that changes compared to its Mediterranean neighbors is the abundant amount of aromatic herbs. Some of them are typically Mediterranean, like parsley, rosemary, thyme, oregano or again basil. Some of the world-renowned traditional meals are Provençal ratatouille, alholi and daube, nicard salad arnissada and pan banhat, Limousin clafoutis, Auvergne italica, Languedocian cacalet, or again Gascon fègue-grath. Occitania is also home of a great variety of cheeses and a great diversity of wines such as Bordeaux, Rhône wine, Gaillac wine, Saint-Emilion wine, Blanquette de Limoux, Muscat de River Salties, Provence wine, Cahors wine, Jurançon. Alcohols such as pastis and Marie Brizard or brandies such as Armagnac and Cognac are produced in the area. Gallery.